this. So, did you ever have a conversation with someone and you left that conversation feeling like you may as well have been talking to the wall? Did you ever feel like that? Raise your hand. Yeah, now my next question is this. How many of you would be willing to admit that that's how someone has felt after having a conversation with you? That they left that conversation feeling like they may as well have been talking to the wall? Right, because the ego gets us in our listening as human beings. We are not very effective listeners. We are terrible at it. Now, it's not that we're flat out not listening to people in life, not that we're blatantly not listening, right? Like, did anybody ever say to you, "Are you listening to me?" Did I ever say that to you? What's your typical response to that question? Of course I'm listening to you. I can repeat every word you said. Right, but really that's not true. That's not the true answer to that question. The true answer to that question is, no, I'm not listening to you. I'm actually listening to me. Listening to you. See, we're listening to that inner conversation as another person is speaking. We're already listening, right? We're already listening. We're listening to ourselves. We're listening to ourselves. Now, same goes true when we go to have conversations with other people and we go to talk. Right, we go to talk to somebody and we think they're like this blank canvas ready to take on everything we have to say. That's what we expect, right? But that's not true, because what's going on for that person? It's the same darn thing, right? They're listening to their own conversation, right? So that's what we're all doing as human beings. Now, in all the years that we've done this work, we have seen that there are some pretty universal ways that we have of listening ineffectively as human beings. And the first kind I'm going to talk about today is get to the point. Get to the point. The get to the point listener. So listeners way too busy to listen to your story, your detail, your fluff. They want you to make your point and make it now. Right? How many of you can relate to being a get to the point listener? Raise your hand. Yep. How many of you have been listening get to the point since I started? Raise your hand. I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. It's a very common way of listening for us as human beings, especially managers, business owners, CEOs. Yes, especially, ineffective way that we listen. Now, the president of our company, Scott Hunter, he was a lawyer before becoming a business coach, and he admits to going through 13 secretaries in 15 years, all because of his get-to-the-point listening. Secretary would walk into his office needing to talk to him about something, he'd be way too busy to look up from his computer screen. And in his mind, he'd be thinking, well, this better be good, and it better relate to what I'm working on right now, and you better get to the point. Now, he didn't say those words, obviously, right? But energetically, that's how he came across. Do you think people wanted to work for him? No. Nobody wanted to work for that. Right? So literally 13 secretaries in 15 years, but the get-to-the-point listener. Next on the list is the listener that we call Name That Tune. Now, I have to admit that when I first learned this whole philosophy, this whole idea around listening, I was like, that is my predominant way of listening. This listener is waiting for you to pause in whatever you're talking about, and they'll finish your sentence for you. They're just going to fill in the blank. I'll even interrupt my husband to fill in the blank for him. Show him how brilliant I am. Show him how connected we are. Right now, in the beginning of a relationship, that's kind of cute. You're like, oh, we finish each other's sentences, right? After a few years of marriage, not so cute. Not so cute. My husband's like, would you let me finish? It's not what I was going to say, right? But the Name That Tune listener, you may know a few of those. Next is the what am I going to say next listener. This listener is waiting for you to pause in whatever you're talking about so they can jump in and talk about them. They just want to tell you about them. So if you say something they can relate to, they will launch into this whole story about them. Have a good friend like that. I'm like, yeah, this weekend with the kids. He's like, kids? Let me tell you about my kids. And he goes off on this long tangent. I'm like, I just wanted to tell you about my kids. Right? But that person just cannot wait to talk. The what am I going to say next listener. Next is the agree, disagree listener. This listener is hearing what you say, and they're measuring it against whether or not they agree with you. And if they agree with you, well, you're very wise as they are. If they disagree with you, then you have no credibility in their mind. You've got a little work you need to do. The agree, disagree listener. Now, in that same category, do you ever know that there are agree listeners all the time? Like someone who's going to agree all the time. They're not really listening. They're just agreeing. They don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to cause conflict, so they'll just agree. Yeah. Right? And in the same token, there is I didn't go to the next slide, did I? Same token, there's a disagree listener all the time. Do you ever know one of those? They love an argument. They're just going to disagree with you, just for the fun of it. Not because they really disagree, but they love the fight. They love the competition. Right? So you may know a few of those. Absolute teenagers. Right? Absolutely. Now there's a win-lose listener. Right? Believes there's a winner and a loser. That loser will not be me. Right? So they've always got to win the argument. There is a right-wrong listener. Do you realize there are people in this world that believe there is a right and a wrong way to do everything? And who's got the right way? They do. The I'm always right listener. The I'm always, or you might know a few of those. Right? They've always got to be right. Find the flaw. There's a find the flaw listener in every organization, every team, every group. This person is listening for what's wrong in any idea, and they'll tell you. They're the first one to put their hand up and say that is not going to work, and here's why. Right? It didn't work before, it's not going to work now. Right? They just find the flaw in any concept or idea. You might know a few of those. The I know listener, also known as teenagers. Right? Also known as teenagers. Anybody have teenagers in here? Or you ever had teenagers? Or you ever were a teenager? Then you know what, everybody knows what I'm talking about, right? You can't tell teenagers anything they don't already know. Now, we are just teenagers walking around in older bodies. So sometimes we slip into that I know listening too. It's like, I know. It's very hard to give that person input, right? The I know listener. Next is the attack listener. This listener takes everything you say as a personal attack. Like you meant to hurt their feelings. Right? It's extremely difficult to give this listener any kind of input or feedback because they just take it personally and they get upset and then it causes this big fight and it's not that's not how I was coming across. But the attack letter is listening in that way. Next is the either or listener. Did you grow up with the belief that you can either have your cake or eat it too? Did you ever grow up with that? You can either have your cake or eat it, right? It's like I can't have both. And so we're listening in that way. I can't have both, so it's going to be either or. And then last on the list is the how can I fix it listener. Men are great at this type of listening. Great at this type of men are natural fixers. Natural fixers, and that is incredibly effective in business. Not quite so effective on the personal level. Right? My husband is a how can I fix it listener. You know, there are times where I just want to talk to him about something, but he's just right there to tell me how to fix it. Now you need to do this, you should say this, and here I'll even type it up for you. And he's like, you know, it's like he's a magician. He like knows exactly what to do, right? But I didn't want that in that moment. I just want you to listen, right? But the how can I fix it listener. Now, can you see yourself in any of those examples? Do you see yourself? Turn to the person next to you and tell them what you do best. What's your favorite way? Go ahead, turn to a person.
You know which one you are? Yeah, I think so.